Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Zerg strategy. Now in this particular replay, our Zerg player here is Death Angel and our Protoss opponent is White Raw. Let's go right into Death Angel vision. I just want to let you guys know too, I got a lot of positive response from that player cam video that I last did. That was our last Zerg video. I just want to let you know that that is not intended to replace our typical strategy videos, which we're going to be looking at here. It's kind of just meant to supplement them. We're going to be doing some additional things besides just that. So you can expect more player cam, you can expect more community spotlight, and I know I've been getting a ton of requests for team strategies, so I'm going to be looking to do some 2v2s at the very least. By the end of next week we should see some 2v2 strategies up. But let's get right into this. We're looking at a Zerg strategy today. Very unorthodox build here. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not standard play. This is not something you do every game. In fact, it's going to be very, very situational, and you're going to see as we move into it how it's situational. But the reason I wanted to post this is because, you know, we all know those really typical builds, and while there are little minute things that you can learn over time about, you know, about the 4-gate, about the 1-1-1 build, about like Speedling, Muta, there's things that you learn over time, and there's different variations depending on what situations you're in, obviously. But you know, there's a lot of other, there's so many variations in this game, and there's so many things that can go not your way, and I kind of want to show you different ways you can deal with stuff like that. So here's an example. Then this is going to be kind of an all-in after we get to a certain point and we make a decision to make it so. But what's a huge problem that we have against Protoss and Terran players as Zerg? It's them doing garbage like this. Putting stuff at our expansion, stopping us from fast expanding. So what are we going to do? Well, instead of dealing with this crap, basically, we're going to just be like, all right, if you're not going to let me draw my hatchery where it should be, then I'm just going to draw my hatchery right here. And people right now, I'm sure, are screaming at the screen. They're freaking out. They're like, Force, you're an idiot. Why are you posting this? This is terrible. Well, let me hear me out. Let me speak here for a moment. We don't intend on mining from this position. In fact, we're going to be seeing another hatchery go down, and this is actually going to be a triple hatch early game build. Now, let's just think for a moment why our player here, Death Angel, would have made this decision. You have to wonder, why do we fast expand as Zerg? What's the purpose? You know, okay, extra minerals, yeah. What's another big purpose? Extra Vespian, you know, if we're trying to tech up to something like Mutas relatively quickly, we really need that extra Vespian gas to get any sizable amount of Mutalist. But what's one of the major reasons we go for fast expansion as Zerg? One of the major reasons is to increase our production capabilities. It's the same reason we get a queen as soon as the spawning pool is finished. We really need that extra larva. So putting this down just for the sake of extra larva as soon as you can, going for that fast expansion as soon as you can just for that extra larva, isn't going to be a bad idea. Now before we go any further with this, what I'm going to do is to go over that build order. We started off with that 15 hatch, and again, we would have preferred that that was right here, but it wasn't. And actually, you're going to see we're putting down another hatch right there for mining purposes specifically. So this is solely for the larva. That is the only reason. And we got it that early because we want these larvae as early as possible. So we started off with this 15 hatch. We followed it up with a 16 spawning pool, 18 extractor, saturating that extractor right away, and then also at 18 supply getting that queen. And then 21 came that third hatch. Now you can see at this point it's become kind of an all-in decision. We have stopped gathering from this extractor here. There's no more gathering. And essentially what we're going to be looking to do is use majority of our larvae to just get out a ton of Zerglings, and we're going to be getting that speed upgrade as well. Now we just start researching that Metabolic Boost at 20 supply. But keep in mind, remember, the reason why we go for a fast expansion a lot of the time is for extra larvae. That's one of the main reasons. Now, I said this is situational and it's map dependent as well. If you're going to go for something like this, if you're going to try to go for an early bust, an early kind of all-in, you know, throw all your cards on the table, try to overrun them with Zerglings, it's going to want to be, obviously you're only going to go for a 3 hatch if you get a block like this, and you're only going to make this decision to go for something like this if also you're on a map with 2 entrances. And the reason I say this is because if you happen to not be able to get into the front entrance, you do want that second option. Otherwise, this all-in is going to be the worst decision you can make. Now keep in mind, you do have other options. This isn't something that, you know, I'm suggesting you do every game. But if you're on a map like this and you really feel like you want to go for a quick win, and remember, any map with this back destructible rock into your opponent's base, this is something you could do to some effectiveness. Again, if he managed to stop you from here, you could just start working on those back rocks. You know, we're going to keep pumping out Zerglings pretty much continuously, also getting that extra queen for some more spawn larva ability. And keep in mind, using those hotkeys so that we can spew larva all the while we're attacking our opponent's base. But the goal is basically to try to get some lings in here and try to kill off that initial zealot before any sentries come in to prevent you from doing that. And remember, like I said, if this didn't work out for you in this particular instance, you could go to those back destructible rocks, and that's the reason you're only going to want to do some sort of all-in like this on a map with back destructible rocks. But I think the most important thing to think about here, I mean, you know, moving our guys in the middle line, the most important thing to think about is the reason why we dropped that fast hatchery. The reason is, one of the main reasons is for that extra larva. So dropping it, if you're unable to drop it where you'd like to, dropping it in another position isn't going to be the worst idea if your goal is just to get that extra larva to go for some early aggression, or even go for something like an all-in like we're seeing here. Now, it isn't necessarily the case that this has to have been all-in. He could have just gone for that extra hatchery inside of his main base if he wanted to, or he could have just not gone for an extra hatchery at all and stayed on one base play. Again, these are you have so many different decisions in a game like this. It's such a diverse game. There's so many different options. There's so many different paths you can take. It's really all up to you, and it depends on the situation and how you want to play and what you feel like doing. So at this point, we're going to just see Zerglings pumping out in mass, basically trying to overrun our opponent. Something else to realize too is if he managed to somehow fend this back, we wouldn't necessarily be in the worst position. The transition isn't impossible if we started droning up and started mining gas, because you have to think as well, as long as you do economic damage, as long as you can hurt his economy and kill off some buildings, even if you don't overrun him in an attack, you can still be at an advantage. And that's something else I want you guys to think about, that, you know, just because you push very aggressively early on doesn't mean that if it doesn't work, you lose the game automatically. I know a lot of players say that. They say, well, if you attack early, if you push all in, if it's a real all-in, yes, but if you push early and you play aggressive early on, that doesn't necessarily mean that if they fend it off, you lose, as long as you do enough damage. If you do enough damage to even things up, if you hit their economy enough, or if you take out any key buildings, like taking out the cybernetics core would be huge, then you can still be on an even pacing or even ahead. So let's just go over this build order real quick. It wasn't much to it. You know, we saw that hatchery over here, and remember, the purpose was we just wanted that early expansion for that extra larva. That's one of the main reasons, aside from the extra resources in Vespian. One of the main reasons is that extra larva. So that was at 15 supply, and again, we saw it here because we were unable to build it where we'd have liked to right at our expansion. 16 supply, we saw that spawning pool. 18 supply, getting that extractor, saturating that extractor right away, also getting that queen at 18 supply. 21 supply is when we saw our third hatchery over here, and at 20 supply, getting that metabolic boost. And now at that point in this particular game, you know, Death Angel did decide to go for an all-in, and he pushed really hard, but that doesn't necessarily have to be your decision. Remember, there's a lot of decisions, there's a lot of choices. I just wanted to show you guys one of the options you have, because this isn't necessarily something that everyone would have thought of. So once again, guys, this has been Force Strategy Gaming. If you guys like our videos and you like what we're doing here, then please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. The thing to realize, though, we're going to be loading up the Nidus network right now. The thing to realize, though, is that a majority of Hellion's damage comes when all of your units are clumped up. So if you can get a surround on him, that's actually safer for all of your drones, because he'll only be able to fire at one at a time rather than firing at 6 of them that are in one big clump. So now...